Welcome to another episode of Just My Thoughts. Today, I'm gonna try something, I guess it's a little different, but at the same time, more the same. Uh, Today, I'm trying to discuss a NF concept, or at least something I've been seeing, but it's weird. Like, you can explain the ST, like, let me give you the facts of this, that, whatever, and people will accept that, no problem. Well, if you try to get too abstract, it can be a little difficult to communicate, and that kind of stuff is hard to share. But I made a little notes, and we're gonna give it a shot and see how it goes. This may make no sense to anyone whatsoever, so let me just put that out there just as a warning before we get started. All right, so it's something I've been noticing and kind of putting together in my head, and to me, I mean, I'm calling it was what it looks like to me. The three structures of perception. And basically, these are the three levels that end up making up your perception of, I don't know if you want to say reality, everything all encompassing. Let's go with that. It's what makes up your perception of everything all encompassing, right? So, uh, level one, it goes one, two, and three, right? So level one is a your core beliefs. Okay, so like, let's say at some point when you were young, I don't know, I would guess elementary school age, between 1 and 10, let's say, you develop what you call your core truths, or what I call your core truths, right? These are truths that you believe in and take to heart. They're kind of like a foundation of, I guess, a foundation of you, and your belief structure, right? So core beliefs, I don't know, like hard work pays. Um, what you get in, what you put into something, you get out. Uh, Honesty is the best policy, or I don't know. It's hard to. I don't know. For myself, hard work pays off. That's a pretty core belief for me. That's something I've always believed in. And even though, yes, I recognize that it's not always the case, that is a core belief that I keep in my heart, that I used to sort of fuel myself, or it's part of my structure that's been holding me up, I guess. Oh god, the blast last is really coming out already. It's a core belief. Core beliefs, I think, would probably be self-explanatory in a certain sense, but at the same time, everybody has different core beliefs. So those core beliefs are like your truths. Okay, those are things that you determine are true, um, because you saw them and you internalized them, accepted them as true to yourself. At time, at times, I'm sure at some point, certain core truths have changed, and other ones you kept. You know, you can kind of pull them in and out as you age, I guess. But for the most part, I suspect most people's core truths after a certain age are pretty set in stone. Um, it could change, but it would probably take something pretty substantial, pretty dramatic for that to happen. So yeah, that level one of the structure of perception would be your core truths. Level two is built upon level one, and level two would be your worldview. So it'd be like how you see the world. So a lot of times, I mean, in some sense, all the time, those core truths are going to influence your worldview. I don't think you can really get around that. So let's say hypothetically, if someone's core truths was I am always somehow a victim, that would most definitely affect your worldview. And that's not to say in some sense you aren't a victim. But I mean, because any and everybody could be a victim of something or someone, but that interpretation of taking that core truth is definitely going to affect your worldview, which is definitely, I would think, not a good thing, because you're interpreting yourself as always the victim. Oh God, my brain is just not firing this morning. Usually, this stuff is just going, and had a late night last night, and I guess it's just not really, everything's not firing. But so actually, I did look up some definitions. And keep in mind, these things are broad. So even a definition that might explain what a worldview is, it could be far more than that. So you gotta take a definition with a grain of salt. You can get 5 different definitions to explain to you what something is, but you still sort of have to come to your own conceptualization of said definition. Worldview: a particular philosophy of life, conception of the world. Yeah, that's pretty good. Worldview is a collection of attitudes, values, stories, and expectations about the world around us, which inform our every thought and action. Yes. So especially which inform our every thought and action. Hence what I was saying about if you were a victim, obviously that would inform your thought and actions, and you would be, I wouldn't say you're screwed, but it wouldn't be a good life. I don't know. That sounds judgy. I'm not meaning to be judgy. But the third level, so you got core truths, then you got level 2 worldviews. Your third level would be ideology, right? So just like your core truths would influence your worldview would influence your ideology. Did I get an ideology definition? Yes, I did. Ideology: a system of ideas or ideals, especially one which forms the basis of an economic or political theory and policy. An ideology is a set of opinions or beliefs or a group or an individual. Very often, ideology refers to a set of political beliefs, a set of ideals that characterize a popular culture. examples: capitalism, communism, socialism, Marxism. Marxism is all the talk these days. But yeah, you get the idea. So those are what I'm saying is your 3 levels of perception. Now, personally, I don't think you necessarily have to have all 3. I myself have core truths, and I have a worldview, although it is a very broad and open worldview, which I actually think that might be the reason why I don't have an ideology. Or at least I certainly don't see it if I do, although I've been told. Anyway, regardless, I don't see an ideology. I guess if I went further in that direction, there is speculation that I would fall on one side or another side of certain ideologies. I don't know, because I have no interest, which is why I have no ideology. But I do have a core truths and a worldview. And even my worldview is like so open. It's almost, I don't want to say barely a worldview, but it's kind of barely a worldview. So I don't think you have to have all 3 levels. But these are the 3 things. These are the 3 structures that make up your level of perception. Okay, so, your core truths is, of course, your foundation, and your worldview is sort of like how you perceive reality, and your ideology leans into how you perceive morality. So those are all pretty basic, give or take, I suppose. So worldview is what you believe is true in reality, and ideology is what you believe is true morally. Those are, I guess, as simple as you can boil those down. And of course, your fundamental truths are what you believe are fundamentally true. If they are not 100% accurate all the time, these are your fundamental truths that you think are true and that you choose to live by, I suppose. So perception, right? This is where it gets interesting to me. Perception is, oh my God, it's everywhere. Your perception, it's hard to have conversations between people. Like I believe that conversation is so important. Even if you don't agree with people, I think you should sit down and have a conversation. I know that's not popular these days, but I feel like that's where you get your understanding from. Excuse me for a second. Okay. That's where you get your understanding from. Shit, I lost my train of thought. Your understanding, I think, from perception. Talking. So talking, having disagreements, different points of view on things. I think to really sit down and talk to someone that you don't agree with, I think is how you get a better understanding. I know it's very easy, and God, it's just it's so much simpler to be dismissive of somebody and be like, oh well, they're an idiot, or they just don't, they just lack vision and they can't understand, or whatever excuse, and just dismiss a person and be like, I don't need to hear them out. I don't need to hear their side. I already know how they feel, and they feel like this for this reason. And it's like, you really should sit down and talk to a person. And that's step one, right? You should sit down and talk to the person. But if you manage to get past step one and you go to step two and you actually sit down and talk to a person, that's where perception really kicks in, because you could speak to somebody and you don't even hear what they're saying. Like, that's the crazy part about perception, because you perceive this person this way. You're only hearing what your perception of them is saying. And oh god, I'm not really explaining this well. I see it happen to me all the time, but it's hard to really put into words to explain to somebody else. It's like a person has this concept of who they think I am. Usually formed off maybe a disagreement we had, or something we don't see eye to eye on, right? So what it looks like happens, what I'm observing happens is a person has their belief, and they have what they form the people who disagree with that belief, the category they form that the people go into. Like, oh, okay, they don't agree with me, then they must be this type of person, or they must feel this kind of way. All right, that's your perception sort of limiting what you can see. And it's hard to get someone to even hear you once that happens, because they just hear what they expect you to say, based off their perception. And it's hard to get through that, even though, God, you try so hard to just speak slowly, try to be as clear as possible, try to really hit it home. It's really hard to break through that shield, because that's their perception. And once, it's almost like your perception makes, in a sense, it simplifies everything and can make everything subjective, and almost binary to a certain degree. It's either black or white. You're either with us or against us. You're either this type of person or this type of person. You're either good or you're the evil. You know what I mean? And like, the world is not black and white. Far as I can see, there's a lot of fucking gray out here. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. And oh god, I'm apologizing, because I'm so sure this isn't clear, but I'm trying. So a person's perception just, it can really hinder communication, and that's even if you get to the point where you're trying. A lot of people are not even going to bother trying, because it's like, I know how I feel, and I'm justified. There's usually some kind of righteousness for whatever reason. I'm so correct, and I know all the answers. I don't need to hear anybody else out. I figured this out already, and that can be a difficult thing to face. Like, most people won't allow themselves to see that about themselves. I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, there's this thing I've been seeing nowadays where a lot of people will be like, I feel like I do based on my personal experience, right? And you don't understand it because you don't understand what it's like to be me. And to be me, I am this specific subcategory of this, and this. And it's like, how the fuck? Of course you can't. Like, let's say I am a biracial person who is, I'm trying not to be too specific because I don't want to offend anyone, but at the same time I'm trying not to be too far out there. But let's say I'm a biracial person who is a little person, right? By a little person, I mean a very person of short stature. Uh, I don't know any other way to describe it without being offensive to some people, and that's not my intent. Um, I'm a biracial little person. Obviously, that's not the majority of people within this planet or whatever, you know. So, yes, people would have a hard time relating to that in general, right? Um, you don't want to be like, well, fuck you, your problems don't matter, because that's not the intent. But at the same time, both parties have to be objective enough to be like, hey, we're trying to do what's good for most people, if all people, right? You want to be as fair as possible. But you have to also understand that you telling me that I can't identify or understand this specific group of people is, it's difficult. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm trying to understand, but at the same time you have to try to be lenient with me too. Like both parties have to kind of meet in the middle. Also, if a person tries to understand your specific group or your individual experience, you cannot in turn around and say, see, you can't understand me because you're not me, which of course by definition you could never understand me. That is not a good way to go. I don't think it's useful in any form or fashion. And God, I wanna just speak very clearly, but at the same time I'm trying not to give offense. Just people have to be more understanding of each other's and have to understand that people in the world have different perceptions, and your perception dictates so much. So understand that if you have different perception, you have different fundamental truths, you have different worldviews, and you have different ideology. It does not make the other party evil or insane or just flat out whatever negative title you want to put on them. That is the most basic way I can say this without stepping on toes. So, I'm just trying to explain that we all live on this planet. We live in communities, we live in cities, we live in states, we live in countries, we live in continents. It is best that we all try to get along and to understand that we're all going to have different perceptions, we're all going to have different worldviews, we're all going to have different ideologies, and we should try to be more understanding of each other and more, I guess I'd say tolerant. It's probably not the best word for it, but just more live and let live. And try not to think that we have all the right answers and the other people are stupid or dumb, or it's practically the same thing, or evil because they don't agree with you or don't perceive the world in the same way that you do. And we should all try to have an open mind. God, that's... Man, to try to edit yourself is so difficult. So, yes, that is what I have been saying. Those are the 3 levels of perception, or 3 structures of perception. I don't know, whichever way. That's just something I've been saying. And God, perception just plays such a big part. I see in just everyday interactions, just having a simple conversation with people talking past each other and not even realizing it. Everybody thinks they're on the same page and you're talking about totally different stuff. And to a certain extent, that is unavoidable. You're never going to be able to 100% hit someone else's perception and vice versa. But you should be open to trying to understand. I mean, I personally would think that I want to actually understand your perception. I want to actually know what you're talking about. But again, that requires patience, I guess, and humility, to be honest. So, fuck. I got nothing. All right. All right. That was an episode of Just My Thoughts. Hopefully this made some sense to you. I'm sure this probably I'm not communicating this well, and I'm sure this probably isn't I'm sure somebody has said this much better than I can articulate at the moment. But yeah. All right. Thank you to whomever is watching. I hope you got some value out of this, and hopefully I can give you something to ponder. Something I've kind of... I don't know where I picked this up recently, but it's something that's been kind of stuck in my head. You cannot change anyone's mind. You can only give them something to think about. So that's my new motto. That's how I'm trying to approach it. And hopefully this was something for you to think about. Hopefully it was entertaining on some level. And hopefully you'll get something from this. All right. Have a nice day. Take care.